In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the idea of flipping the classroom, and there are different names or labels on the same issue. For example, it is also referred to as flipping or flipped instruction, classroom flipping, and flipped learning. But the whole idea, actually, the flip is the let's say key word here, which means alter the natural course of activities, because in this let's say recently novel approach, homework is done in the class and classwork is done at home, so we just alter the natural course. And this is based on a paradigm shift. It means a basic change that should be made in response to the surrounding stimuli and also requests and requirements. According to the idea of flipped learning, less cognitively demanding tasks could be implemented and performed at home when students have plenty of time based on individualization, so that it could just free up more class time for more challenging tasks, inside the class, or during the class time. And so it can just make room for individualization, because these students can work according to their own learning styles, and also at their own convenience, and at the ideal pace, and which is individualized. And at the same time, actually, it can promote more collaborative learning, particularly in the class and after the class. So you can see that the class time could be extended dramatically, and that is the beauty of that. Flipped learning. And as I said, it can promote individualization and at the same time collaborative learning, something that I refer to as individualized interactivity and interactive individualization. So also there is another let's say unique advantage that could be derived from flipped learning, and this refers to interdependency. We have a dependency spectrum starting from the lowest, let's say, rank, that is dependency, then independency, and then actually finally interdependency. Interdependency refers to social autonomy, and which is a higher let's say state of autonomy in reference to or in comparison to individual autonomy. Social autonomy refers to the idea of learning from each other. That is to say, actually, the students depend on each other in order to learn something from each other. There is an exchange of questions and responses, and they try to just shed more light on some mysterious parts and learn from each other collaboratively, and at the same time individually, before the class and after the class and in the class. This is called social autonomy. So flipped learning, or flipping the class, can provide the students and the teacher with this exceptional opportunity to practice and to, let's say, accommodate both language input and output. Language input means receiving actually the language, or taking the role of a receptive learner, and language output means producing the language. So they can learn something. For example, they just search something on the net, for instance Wikipedia, so they are receiving some information, they are learning individually most of the time, And then when they just share their findings with their partners in the form of, for example, leaving comments. So this is a perfect example of language production, and they let other students actually receive something or learn something from them. So there is an amalgamation or combination of both language input and output. And the other point or advantage of flipped learning is skill integration. Skill integration refers to the natural process of integrating all the 4 basic language skills, that is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. For example, in our roundtables, if when there is an embedded lecture in a post, the students listen to that, then they might want to acquire more information and just conduct some inquiry-based investigation. So they just practice reading, and then they start writing, in our comment forums or discussion boards. So in so doing, they practice writing. And in the class, synchronous class, at the same time, actually, they start speaking about their findings. So naturally and integratively, let's say, they practice all the 4 skills. And as I said, there are some in-class and out-of-class activities, because flipped learning does not necessarily take place in CAL classes. CAL, computer-assisted language learning, something that we practice on LELB Society. In face-to-face classes, they can also practice flipped learning. So if it is practiced in face-to-face classes, the real classes just take place in a physical classroom, okay? So it's not call oriented. So we have 2, let's say, basic parts: in-class activities and out-of-class activities. It means that the students actually, before the class or after the class, they make some contribution. But in call-oriented classes, something that happens here on LELB Society, for example, we have synchronous activities and asynchronous activities. Synchronous means at the same time, usually, for example, in the class, for instance, actually lecture delivery and an interview between the lecturer and the students. This is synchronous activities and asynchronous activities. For example, in our roundtables, you watch an embedded lecture and then you acquire some information about that, and so on and so forth. This is asynchronous, means not at the same time. And there, apart from let's say, myriad of other advantages, there is another advantage that I want to just call your attention to, and that is about the let's say the fact that, for example, if you miss a session, if you're absent in one session, because of the fact that you can just create an archive of let's say, all the activities, for instance, podcasts, you have this chance to listen to those podcasts or watch videos and get involved in collaborative writing activities. So in simple words, you do not miss anything, because it is based on archiving and recording and actually storing the information and using them for future purposes. Thank you very much for your listening, and if you have any question, I will be there actually to just inform you about. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome. So
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. So if you have any question, let's share.
Actually, I have one point to mention about. I think this method is really perfect for all the students, but the point is that it needs some maturity as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is not practical for all of students. For example, it is too difficult to, let's say, conduct this method in primary school, for example.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think,
and also for elementary students, it's not practical.
Yeah, and I think it's a skill to be able to actually progress in your field by flip learning. But that's really beneficial and perfect if you try to learn it, and afterwards you can learn everything without the help of, without the need of any teachers or something.
Absolutely. You know, I'm at the moment, thank you for raising this point. At the moment, I'm conducting research on this idea, flip learning or flipping the classroom. And one of the basic points, as you said, actually, is elevating the level of learner autonomy. You know, it makes you autonomous, and wait for the teacher to teach us something. You know, and we do not usually take or make any effort to just learn something if the teacher does not teach it. But this is really traditional approach to learning, and is in contrast with flipped learning. You see?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So, do you have any other comment? Anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Mm-hmm. So, when I ask you, for example, to take the round table more seriously, you know, that's because of the fact that I want to implement this approach. I mean, flip learning, and I think that this is good for you, and I mean, everybody.
Right.
And you know, according to the to flipped learning or flipping the classroom, the basic part of your learning takes place before the class. Did you know that? Do not expect that, for example, in 1 hour or 2 hours a week, a miraculous happening is going to just take place. You know, it's not logical.
That's true.
Yeah. For example, in our part 1100 part of the class, you study the course, the unit before the class, and you just rehearse it or rephrase it or paraphrase different parts, and you just look up the words, you know, and because you know that there will be some questions and answers, so you just prepare yourself for that. So this is flip learning. And when you watch a video and then you just Google it or Wikipedia that, you know, and you learn something, you just get involved in collaborative activities, and you use that comment form in a nested or threaded way, and you share your findings. You just transcend the limit of information in that video. For example, you may talk about group therapy, as Sasan has said or talked about, and so group therapy, exposure therapy, behavior therapy. This is not something that Dr. Kolk said about. You know, it's beyond that. So this is flip learning. See?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So, and the students would become more active, as I said, more active instead of just passive, because in the past the students were usually, I mean, in traditional approaches, the students were passive. They were ready to be fed, you know, instead of just conducting some research or something or inquiry. They were just waiting for their learner or for the teacher to just feed them with some information.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any comment, any question?
And also, I think this method needs motivation as well. You know, for example, in the university or when you are researching something for yourself, for your thesis or something, you have enough motivation to gain more and more information about that specific topic. But sometimes you can see that, for example, in the schools, I don't know what, or maybe
No,
in
it's
some
not.
stages of university, students are not that, uh, let's say, interested to that topic, so they cannot follow flip learning as well.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it could be prescribed to for any situation. No, you cannot just implement flip learning in each context. It's impossible. As you said,
Yeah.
the level of motivation, the level of education, the amount of time that the participants or learners are willing to spend on activities, because it's not actually it's a time consuming and full-time, let's say, job or education system. Not full-time, I mean, it takes a lot of time, you need to spend so much time on that. And
Yeah.
but it is really a fulfilling and rewarding activity.